Imagine you are climbing a ladder. You are climbing with literally everything you have. Sweat, determination, intense focus. You are being incredibly efficient.
Right? You are checking off those rungs like items on a daily to-do list.
Exactly. You are busy, extremely busy. But what if you get to the very top, you are breathless and totally exhausted, only to realize that the ladder was leaning against the completely wrong wall?
I mean, it is a truly terrifying thought experiment.
What?
The idea that we can be efficient, that we can get a massive amount of things done in a single day without ever actually being effective.
Yeah, it's like we tick off the boxes, we zero out the inbox, we run frantically from meeting to meeting.
And yet, in the grand scheme of our lives, we might be making absolutely zero progress toward the things that actually matter to us. It really confronts you with the harsh reality that speed is completely irrelevant if your direction is wrong.
We totally confuse being busy with being effective. We confuse speed with direction. And that creates this massive intellectual gap for so many of us. We are running faster and faster, but are we actually going anywhere?
Right, and that brings us to the core problem we are tackling in today's deep dive. We live in a world that is completely obsessed with what our source material calls the personality ethic.
The personality ethic. Okay, break that down for us.
So, to understand the personality ethic, you have to look at the history of success literature in the West. Our author actually did a massive study on this. For the first 150 years of American history, success was defined by the character ethic.
Meaning things like integrity and humility.
Exactly. Fidelity, temperance, courage, justice, the golden rule, those deep foundational traits. But then, right around the 1920s, the paradigm shifted. We moved into the personality ethic.
Oh, interesting. So success became more about PR.
Yes, success became a function of personality, of public image, of attitudes and behaviors. It became all about these skills and techniques that essentially just lubricate the processes of human interaction.
I mean, it became all about the quick fix, the social Band-Aid, like how to smile to get the sale or how to subtly mirror someone's body language to fake a rapport.
Precisely. It treats the symptoms, the immense stress, the fractured relationships, the general lack of fulfillment. It treats all of that with a quick aspirin. But it completely ignores the chronic underlying condition. Because at the end of the day, you really cannot fake your way to a meaningful life.
And that is exactly why today's deep dive is so special. We are not going to be talking about a checklist of life hacks or quick to-dos.
No, not at all.
We are talking about a fundamental shift. We are talking about moving all the way back to the character ethic, looking at an inside-out approach to personal change. Because as we're about to find out together, you cannot change the fruit without changing the root.
And the map we are using for this journey today is arguably the personal leadership handbook of the century. We are doing a comprehensive deep dive into Stephen Covey's absolute masterpiece, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
This book is an absolute titan. It is a global phenomenon. We are talking over 40 million copies sold worldwide.
It's not just a book, it's an entire movement.
Right. Warren Bennis famously called it a book about the human condition. You have CEOs, parents, world leaders. They've all turned to this text. Because Covey wasn't just some author sitting in a room, he was a leadership authority who worked with literally thousands of people. Everyone from top IBM executives to struggling families.
He didn't just theorize. He saw these principles work in the messy, incredibly chaotic reality of actual human life. And what makes Covey so remarkably distinct is that he isn't offering a method or a gimmick. He's offering a mirror.
He's asking you to look at who you actually are, not just what you do.
Right. It is incredibly heavy lifting, I won't lie, but the payoff is just enormous.
Now, before we start climbing that ladder and making sure it's against the right wall this time, I want to mention something for those of you listening who really want to master this kind of life-changing material. If you love deep diving into the world's most influential literature and you want to do it while you're commuting or hitting the gym, you absolutely need to check out the Audible Books channel.
It's such a great resource.
It really is. It's not just about passively reading. It's about joining a community of lifelong learners who are committed to truly mastering these concepts. So hit that subscribe button. It's a small action with a huge return on investment, which is very much in the spirit of the Quadrant 2 activities we are going to unpack today.
Absolutely. It's a perfect example of sharpening the saw, which is actually the final habit we'll get to later. But to bridge us into the real meat of this deep dive, I want to tease a concept we are going to explore called the circle of influence.
Oh, I love this one.
Most of us waste so much emotional energy screaming at the weather or the national news or our boss's terrible mood. things we have absolutely zero control over. Covey is going to show us exactly how to take all of that power back.
But we can't just jump straight to the habits, right? We have to lay down the groundwork first. We have to talk about maps and territories.
Yes, this is the most critical starting point. If you don't grasp this, none of the 7 habits will work for you. Covey introduces the concept of a paradigm as a map. Now just imagine for a second you are standing in downtown Chicago,
Okay, I'm in Chicago.
and you have a specific destination in mind. Let's say the Art Institute. You are highly motivated, you have a fantastic positive attitude, and you are working really hard to get there. But the map you're holding in your hand is a map of Detroit.
Okay, hold on. Let's play devil's advocate here for a second. If I'm super motivated and I'm putting in the effort, won't I eventually find something good? Or at least make some sort of progress?
Well, let's actually play that out. You have a map of Detroit, but you are physically walking around Chicago. You can work on your behavior all you want. You can walk faster, you can be more diligent, you can wake up at 5 a.m. to start walking. What actually happens?
I just get lost faster. I am efficiently heading to the totally wrong place.
Exactly. Or let's say you decide to work on your attitude. You attend motivational seminars, you think positive, you visualize reaching your destination. What happens then?
I'm still lost, but I guess I'm happy about it. I'm blissfully ignorant. I'm staring at a random hot dog stand thinking it's the Art Institute, and I'm just smiling.
Precisely. The point Covey is making here is that behavior and attitude do matter, but they are completely secondary to having the right map. If your fundamental paradigm, the actual lens through which you see the world, is inaccurate, no amount of positive effort will ever get you to the right destination.
We try to hack our way to success with all these personality techniques, but we are operating with a totally faulty map of human nature.
Right. We think life is a zero-sum competition, or we assume people are inherently lazy, or we think we are just victims of circumstance. Those are all maps. And if the map is wrong, the territory is never going to match.
Which leads perfectly to the concept of the paradigm shift, that sudden moment where the map changes. And Covey illustrates this beautifully with that famous optical illusion, the young woman versus the old woman.
It is such a classic perception experiment. So
Yeah.
you show half a room, a picture of a young, very fashionable woman. She has a necklace, she's looking away. Then you show the other half of the room, a picture of an old woman. She has a large nose, a shawl pulled over her head. She looks kind of sad. Then you bring everyone together and you show them a composite image that cleverly contains the lines from both pictures. And you ask the room to describe what they see.
And absolute chaos ensues.
It really does.
Right.
The people who are primed with the young woman see a young woman. They say, she's lovely, she looks like a model. The people primed with the old woman say, what are you talking about? She's an old hag, she looks depressed. And they will literally argue with each other.
Over the exact same picture.
Yes. They're looking at the exact same black lines on white paper, but they're experiencing completely different realities.
And the crazy part is, neither of them is actually wrong.
That is the kicker. They are both right, based entirely on their conditioning. The profound lesson here is that we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Wow. We see the world as we are.
Our conditioning, our upbringing, our past experiences, they all act like a literal lens. And until we admit that we are even wearing a lens, we are trapped. We walk around thinking we are perfectly objective, but we are really just projecting our own map onto the territory.
But here's the thing about paradigms, they are incredibly hard to break. We love our maps, we fiercely defend them. But sometimes life just steps in and forces that lens to shatter.
It does.
Covey tells this unbelievable story about a paradigm shift he experienced personally on a subway in New York. And I want to dwell on this for a second because it's not just a nice little anecdote, it feels like a biological event.
It's the subway story, and you're right, it's incredibly visceral. So picture the scene. It's a Sunday morning, you're on the New York subway, it's peaceful, people are quietly reading their newspapers, resting their eyes, it's quiet, you can almost smell the stale coffee in the newsprint.
It's like a rare sanctuary in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
And then the peace is just completely broken.
Suddenly this man gets onto the train car with his children. And these kids are totally wild. They are yelling at the top of their lungs, throwing things around, literally grabbing people's papers right out of their hands. It's instant chaos. And the father, he just sits down, closes his eyes, and is seemingly entirely oblivious. He is doing absolutely nothing to control them.
Now, if you are sitting on that train listening to this right now, be honest with yourself. What are you feeling in that moment?
Irritation, judgment, righteous indignation. You are sitting there thinking, what is wrong with this guy? Why is he being so completely irresponsible? Why doesn't he teach his kids some basic human decency?
And Covey felt all of this too.
He did. He was rapidly losing his patience. He felt he had to step up and do something for the good of everyone in the car. Finally, he just couldn't take it anymore. He leans over to the man and says, "Effectively, sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you couldn't control them a little more."
He's correcting the behavior. He's trying to fix the situation based on his current map, which says unruly kids plus passive dad equals bad parenting.
Exactly. And this is the pivotal moment. The man slowly lifts his eyes, as if he's just waking up from a terrible nightmare or a deep fog, and he says softly,
Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either.
"Yeah."
Just even retelling it now, it hits you right in the chest.
It really does.
Yeah.
And think deeply about what happened to Stephen Covey in that exact split second. The irritation, gone. The judgment, completely evaporated. It wasn't that he tried to suppress his anger using some management technique. The anger simply ceased to exist.
It was instantly replaced.
Instantly replaced with compassion, with sympathy, with an overwhelming desire to help. He immediately said, "Your wife just died. I'm so incredibly sorry. Can I do anything to help?"
That's the key distinction. He didn't have to fake it. He didn't have to bite his tongue or count to 10. His map fundamentally changed from bad father to grieving widower, and his feelings and behaviors just naturally followed.
That is a true paradigm shift. It shows us that if we want to make small incremental changes in our lives, we can work on our behavior or our attitude. But if we want to make quantum leaps, we have to work on our paradigms.
Yeah.
We have to fundamentally change how we see.
Okay, so our maps are clearly subjective. My map is different from your map. But if all maps are subjective, what is the actual territory? Is there anything objectively real we can hold on to, or is everything just relative?
That is such a profound question, and Covey answers it directly with the concept of principles. He refers to them as lighthouses.
Ah, the lighthouse story. This is a classic naval legend.
It is. It's a story originally told by Frank Cook. Two battleships are out at sea on maneuvers in incredibly heavy fog. The lookout spots a light in the distance on the starboard bow. It's steady, which means they're on a direct collision course. So the captain calls out to the signalman to message the other ship, "We're on a collision course. Advise you change course 20 degrees.
And the signal comes right back through the fog.
Advisable for you to change course 20 degrees.
The captain is definitely not having that. I mean, he's a captain. He's got the ego, the rank, the sheer power of a battleship.
Right. So he signals back very aggressively. "I am a captain. Change course 20 degrees. The reply comes back. "I am a seaman, second class. You had better change course 20 degrees. Now the captain is absolutely furious. He spits out the final command. "I am a battleship. Change course 20 degrees.
This is the ultimate corporate power play. I am a battleship. I am literally too big to move.
And the final reply comes back through the fog. "I am a lighthouse."
Boom. You do not move the lighthouse.
Precisely. The battleship changed course. The lighthouse represents principles. These are natural laws like fairness, integrity, honesty, human dignity, growth, patience. These aren't just values we decide to choose. Values are internal and highly subjective. Principles are laws that exist whether we happen to like them or not.
Like gravity.
Exactly like gravity. You cannot break these laws. You can only break yourself against them. The territory of truly effective living is built entirely on these principles. If our map aligns with these principles, we succeed. If our map fights them, if we secretly think we can cheat or lie or treat people like objects and still succeed long term, we are going to crash against the rocks.
So true effectiveness isn't just about getting what you want. It's getting what you want in a way that actively aligns with these natural laws. And Covey gives us a brilliant definition of effectiveness that revolves around a fable we probably all heard as kids, the goose and the golden egg.
Yes, this is the P/PC balance. It is central to absolutely everything else in the book. The fable is very simple. A poor farmer goes out to his barn one day and finds a goose that lays solid golden eggs. Overnight, he becomes incredibly wealthy. He's ecstatic. But soon, he gets greedy and impatient. He wants all the gold right now. He doesn't want to wait for the daily production of just one egg.
Yeah.
So he cuts open the goose to get all the eggs at once.
He finds absolutely nothing, just a dead goose.
Right. He totally destroyed the asset that actually produced the result he wanted. In Covey's terminology here, P stands for production. That is the golden egg, the desired result you are after. PC stands for production capability. That is the goose, the underlying asset that creates the result.
Let's apply this to the real world because I genuinely think we live in a massive kill the goose culture right now.
We absolutely do. Just look at the modern corporate world. A manager desperately wants to hit the quarterly numbers, which is the P. So what does he do? He drives his team into the ground. He demands constant overtime, creates a toxic culture of fear, and completely burns everyone out. And maybe he hits the numbers for that specific quarter. He gets his golden egg. But what happens the very next quarter?
Half the team quits, the other half is sick, or they are just completely disengaged. The goose is totally dead.
Exactly. He destroyed his production capability. Or let's take a physical example Covey uses. A lawnmower. You use the lawnmower constantly to get the cut lawn, the P, but you never change the oil, you never sharpen the blade. Eventually the mower dies. You ignored the PC.
Or in a relationship. Say you are a parent and you really want a clean room from your teenager. The clean room is the P. If you constantly nag, threaten, and yell at them to get that room clean, you might get a clean room for one afternoon. But you are actively killing the goose, which is your relationship with your child. Eventually, the teenager rebels, the trust is broken, and you end up with no more clean rooms and worse, a damaged relationship.
Covey actually shares a beautiful, positive example of PC investment with his own daughter. He really disliked the movie Star Wars. It just wasn't his thing. But his daughter absolutely loved it. So he decided to take her to see it purely as an investment in the relationship in the PC. And afterward, she opened up to him in this incredible way about the deeper philosophy of the Jedi Knights and how it applied to life. It bonded them immensely. He fed the goose.
So effectiveness is always this delicate balance. It's not just violently producing results, it's diligently maintaining the capability to produce those results in the future.
Yes, you always have to feed the goose.
That is a perfect, seamless transition into part 2 of our deep dive. We've set the philosophical stage with paradigms and principles. Now we move into what Covey calls the private victory. This encompasses habits 1, 2, and 3. It is the journey from dependence to independence.
And I cannot stress this enough. You cannot skip this phase. You cannot possibly have a public victory, which is success with other people, until you have achieved a private victory, which is mastery over yourself. You can't lead anyone else until you can effectively lead yourself.
Habit 1 is the bedrock of it all. Be proactive. But let's be real for a second. Be proactive sounds a lot like basic corporate speak for just take initiative. Is that really all it is?
No, it is so much deeper than that. It's deeply philosophical. It actually starts by examining the social mirror. As humans, we are so often just reflections of what other people say about us. You're always late, you eat like a horse, you're stubborn, just like your father. We let these external inputs define our reality. We buy heavily into determinism.
Meaning the belief that we are just programmed by outside forces?
Exactly. There's genetic determinism. I have a bad temper because my grandfather had a bad temper. It's in my DNA. Then there's psychic determinism. I'm afraid of conflict because my parents divorced when I was young. And environmental determinism. I can't succeed because my boss is a jerk or the economy is terrible.
We act like we're just Pavlov's dogs. Ring the bell, we salivate.
Right. But Covey argues that being truly proactive is about realizing we are not determined by these things. And the most powerful, undeniable illustration of this comes from the life of Viktor Frankl.
Oh, Viktor Frankl. I mean, talk about the highest possible stakes. If this principle can work in his situation, it literally works anywhere.
It is the ultimate test case for human agency. Viktor Frankl was a prominent Jewish psychiatrist who was imprisoned in the Nazi death camps during the Holocaust. His parents, his brother, his wife, they almost all perished in the camps. He himself was brutally tortured, starved, and stripped of absolutely everything. His human dignity, his clothes, his wedding ring, even his name. He was reduced to a literal number tattooed on his arm. But in the absolute depths of that hell, he discovered what he called the last of the human freedoms.
Which was what, exactly?
He realized that his captors could control his entire physical environment. They could control his body, they could starve him or beat him, but they could not control his mind. They could not control how he chose to respond to what they were doing to him. He discovered that between the stimulus, what happens to you, and the response, what you do about it, there is a space, a gap. And in that specific space lies our absolute freedom and our power to grow.
That honestly gives me chills. In that space lies our freedom. It's such a profound reclamation of agency. Because, as we said, most of behavioral psychology at the time treated humans basically as complex machines. Stimulus comes in, response goes out automatically.
Right, and Frankl stood up and said, no, we have self-awareness, we have imagination, we have an internal conscience, and most importantly, we have independent will.
Yeah.
We can consciously choose to step into that gap and select a response based on our core values, rather than just reacting blindly based on our momentary feelings or conditions.
But let's try to bring this down to earth for a minute, because most people listening aren't in a literal death camp. They are sitting in a toxic office, or they're dealing with a really difficult marriage. It's super easy to say, choose your response on a podcast, but when your boss is screaming at you in a meeting, your body physically reacts. Your heart rate shoots up.
It does, absolutely. And that is the biological stimulus happening. Being proactive doesn't mean you somehow don't feel the pinch of that stress. It means you don't let the pinch dictate your subsequent action. Reactive people are totally driven by their feelings, by their environment, by the weather. He made me so mad, I have to do this. The rain totally ruined my day. That is pure reactive language. It subtly absolves you of all responsibility. It turns you into a passive victim.
The phrase "I have to" is such a big one. I have to go to this terrible meeting. I have to work late.
But you don't actually have to. You choose to go to that meeting because you want to keep your salary or you want to maintain your professional reputation. But completely owning that choice totally changes the psychological energy. Proactive language sounds completely different. I choose. I prefer. I will. It takes full ownership of the situation.
And this brings us beautifully back to that teaser from the intro, the concept of the circles.
Yes, the circle of concern versus the circle of influence. I want you to mentally picture a large circle. That large circle contains absolutely everything you care about or worry about: the national debt, the threat of nuclear war, what your annoying neighbor thinks of you, AI taking your job, the weather. That entire area is your circle of concern. But inside that large circle is a much smaller circle, the circle of influence. These are the things you can actually do something about right now.
And the ultimate trap is focusing all our energy on the wrong circle.
Exactly. Reactive people hyper-focus on the circle of concern. They focus on the haves. If I only had a better boss, if I had more money, if my spouse just had more patience. They obsess over things completely outside of their control. And what happens? This generates massive negative energy, and it actually causes their inner circle of influence to shrink. They become these annoying, complaining victims who feel powerless.
Whereas highly proactive people approach it entirely differently.
Proactive people aggressively focus their time and energy on the circle of influence. They focus on the B's. I can be more patient. I can be more diligent in my work. I can be a much better listener. By working diligently on the things they can actually control, their overall nature becomes much more positive and active. And as a result, their circle of influence actually starts to physically expand. They begin to affect the very things they used to just sit around worrying about.
There's a fantastic story in the book about a gopher, a lower-level executive, who really mastered this concept in a highly toxic corporate setting.
Yes, I love this example because it's so practical. This guy worked for a president who was a total dictator, a real tyrant of a boss. Everyone else in the executive team just gathered in the hallways and constantly complained, pouring all their energy into their circle of concern. Did you hear what he said today? He's totally crazy. We can't get anything done. But this one specific executive decided to focus entirely on his circle of influence. When the dictatorial president told him, go for this, go for that, this guy didn't just act as a mindless gopher. He analyzed the core of the request. He anticipated the boss's underlying need. He actively gathered data, and he presented a fully formed recommendation.
He practiced what they call completed staff work.
Exactly. He would come back and say, sir, here is the current situation. Here are 3 viable options. Here's my firm recommendation, and here is all the data to back it up. He proactively compensated for his boss's glaring weaknesses rather than complaining about them. And eventually, the boss wouldn't make a single major move without asking him, well, what do you think we should do? He expanded his circle of influence so effectively that he became utterly indispensable. He didn't wait around for the boss to undergo a personality transplant. He changed his own approach.
That is just so powerful. He stopped being a passive victim of the boss's volatile personality and became an absolute master of his own contribution. Okay, so we are proactive now. We are firmly in the driver's seat of our lives. Now we move to habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. And this habit starts with a visualization exercise that is, well, it's a little morbid, to be honest, but it is incredibly effective.
It is the funeral exercise. And I really challenge everyone listening right now to actually do this mentally. Covey asks you to imagine that you are walking into a funeral parlor. You walk in, you see the gorgeous flowers, you hear the soft organ music playing, you feel that heavy sadness in the room, you walk slowly up to the front, you look down inside the casket, and you come face to face with yourself. This is your funeral, exactly 3 years from today.
Wow. And the setup is that there are four distinct speakers giving eulogies: a family member, a close friend, a work colleague, and someone from your community or your church.
Right. And the burning question is, what do you want them to say about you? Not what will they say, given your current trajectory. What do you deeply want them to say? Do you really want your colleague to stand up there and say, well, he was always on time for Zoom calls and he reliably cleared his inbox every single day?
I highly doubt it. You want them to talk about your character. You want to hear he was incredibly honest, she was a selfless mentor, he was an endlessly loving father.
Exactly. This crystal clear definition of your ultimate end determines exactly how you should be living your life today. If you desperately want your children to stand up and say you are a loving, deeply present parent, but currently you're grinding out 80 hours a week at the office and staring at your phone when you are home, you are not beginning with the end in mind. You are efficiently climbing the wrong ladder. You are speeding toward a funeral where your kids will stand up and say, honestly, we hardly even know him.
That is a very heavy realization, but it clarifies your priorities instantly. So this habit is really about consciously writing the script for your own life, creating what Covey calls a personal mission statement.
Yes, a literal personal constitution.
Mm.
And it needs to be based on those correct principles we discussed earlier. It becomes the ultimate standard by which you measure every single decision in your life. But to write a genuine one, you have to look closely at your center, what is currently at the dead center of your life. Because we all have a center, even if we are completely blind to it.
Covey lists quite a few common ones in the text: spouse-centered, money-centered, family-centered, work-centered. Let's really break down work-centered because I think a huge percentage of high achievers fall right into that trap.
Absolutely. A work-centered person derives their fundamental security, their guidance, and their wisdom entirely from their job. Their entire identity is wrapped up in, I am a VP of marketing or I am a senior developer. The massive problem there is that work is a highly volatile variable. If the industry suddenly pivots, or the economy crashes and they get laid off, or they simply reach retirement age, who are they?
Their entire identity vanishes. They are nothing. The center just collapses in on itself.
Exactly. It's a house built on sand. Or let's look at spouse-centered. On the surface, it sounds very romantic, right? You are my absolute everything. I live only for you. But psychologically, it's actually a recipe for total disaster. If your internal emotional stability depends entirely on your partner's fluctuating moods or behavior, you are incredibly vulnerable. You quickly become possessive, chronically jealous, highly dependent. You ironically end up smothering and driving away the very person you love the most.
So if all of these alternative centers are unstable, what is the actual alternative?
The principal center. Because principles never change. Principles don't react to the stock market. Principles don't get angry and divorce you. If you are deeply centered on timeless principles like fairness, integrity, continuous learning, and service, you have a solid, immovable core. You can gracefully handle a sudden job loss because your core identity isn't your job title. Your identity is, I am a highly resilient person of integrity who can create value anywhere. You can handle severe relationship conflict without falling apart because your internal security comes from your own character, not from frantically seeking the other person's constant approval.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So habit 1 essentially says, you are the programmer of your life. Habit 2 says, write the program, which is the mission statement. And now we arrive at habit 3. Put first things first. This is where the philosophical rubber finally meets the practical road. This is run the program.
This is the practical, daily fulfillment of the first two habits. It is all about personal management. And the absolute core tool Covey introduces here is the time management matrix. We divide every single activity in our lives into 4 distinct quadrants based on 2 vital factors: urgency and importance.
Let's really break these 2 factors down because understanding this matrix is a total game changer. Urgent means it requires your immediate, undivided attention. It rings loudly like a phone. It literally shouts now. Important, on the other hand, means it contributes directly to your mission, your values, and your long-term goals. It has everything to do with actual results.
Right. So quadrant 1 is things that are both urgent and important. This is the legitimate crisis. The kitchen is literally on fire. The massive project deadline is tomorrow morning. A client is threatening to sue. You absolutely have to be here and handle it. But if you live your entire life in quadrant 1, you will completely burn out. You become a crisis manager, constantly putting out fires.
And then there's quadrant 3, which is urgent but not important. This is the great deception of modern life. It's the constant ringing phone. It's the endless barrage of email notifications and Slack pings. It's that 1-hour meeting that definitively could have been a 3-sentence email. It feels important in the moment because it's so urgent and in your face, but it does not move the needle on your actual mission at all. It's usually just fulfilling someone else's priorities.
Exactly. And quadrant 4 is not urgent and not important. Doom scrolling on social media for 3 hours, binge watching reality TV you don't even like, mindless busy work. This is just pure waste and escapism from the stress of quadrants 1 and 3.
Mhm.
But the real magic, the absolute secret to high effectiveness lives in quadrant 2.
Quadrant 2, not urgent, but deeply important.
Yes, this is genuine relationship building. This is long-term strategic planning. This is preventative maintenance on your car or your health. This is exercising regularly. This is taking the time to write out that personal mission statement. Living in quadrant 2 is the absolute key to true effectiveness.
But here's the million-dollar question. If quadrant 2 is where all the life-changing magic happens, why is it so incredibly hard to actually stay there? We all intellectually know we should be planning our weeks and going to the gym. Why don't we do it?
Because quadrant 2 activities never, ever act on you. You have to proactively act on them. Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 3 actively shout at you. They provide proximate noise. The email notification demands your attention. The colleague knocking on your office door forces you to look up. These things trick your brain into feeling productive. We actually get a little dopamine hit from solving a minor urgent crisis. Hey, I just cleared my inbox to 0. I'm so productive today.
But in reality, you just spent 2 hours expertly organizing a bunch of junk mail and minor requests. You didn't spend a single minute writing the novel you claim is your life's dream or actively playing with your kids.
Exactly. Quadrant 2 is completely quiet. There is absolutely no immediate dopamine hit for sitting quietly and planning your business strategy for the next 3 years. It requires you to consciously generate your own internal urgency. It's exactly why Covey says you have to have a burning yes inside you, which comes from your Habit 2 mission statement, to be able to comfortably and cheerfully say no to all the urgent noise of Quadrant 3.
And you really do have to say no. You literally cannot do it all.
You have to learn to smile pleasantly and say a firm no to things that are urgent but ultimately not important, so you can fiercely protect your time to say yes to the quiet things that are vitally important but not urgent. Manage your life by the compass of your values, not by the rapidly ticking clock of efficiency.
Wow. Okay, so that perfectly wraps up the private victory. We've moved from being victims dependent on others to being highly proactive, independent individuals. We own our responses, we have a clear mission, and we know how to prioritize the important over the merely urgent. Now and only now are we ready for the public victory. We are moving from independence to interdependence.
And again, the sequence here is not a suggestion. It is a law. You simply cannot have genuinely successful relationships without achieving self-mastery first. As Covey brilliantly puts it, you can't talk your way out of problems you behave yourself into. If you are still highly reactive, completely centered on your own fragile ego, and living in constant crisis mode, you physically cannot be a good, trusting partner or an effective leader.
Before we dive into the specific relational habits, we have to explore the concept of the emotional bank account. I absolutely love this metaphor. It's so brilliantly simple, but so devastatingly accurate. Every single relationship you have is essentially a bank account.
Yes, it is a brilliant framework. The account balance represents the exact amount of baseline trust that has been built up in any given relationship. You make deposits into this account through things like small acts of kindness, rigorously keeping your promises, clearly clarifying your expectations up front, apologizing sincerely when you screw up, and showing intense loyalty to people when they are absent from the room.
And you make withdrawals too.
Unfortunately, yes. Withdrawals are acts of disrespect. Breaking a promise you made, being two-faced or gossiping, or simply ignoring the other person.
And the practical reality is, if the account is heavily overdrawn,
Then every single communication is an absolute minefield. If I have a very low balance with you, everything I say gets totally misinterpreted. You are constantly looking for my hidden agenda. I'm walking on eggshells trying not to offend you. But conversely, if the trust balance is exceptionally high, if I've made massive consistent deposits over several years, I can occasionally make a mistake. I can say the totally wrong thing in a meeting, and you'll just say, hey, I know what you meant, we're totally good. High trust literally greases the gears of all human communication.
one incredibly counterintuitive insight Covey shares here is the idea that P problems are actually PC opportunities. Can you explain that dynamic?
This completely flips the script on how we view daily interruptions. Let's say you are working hard on a report that's production, your P, and your young child comes into the room crying with a minor problem, interrupting your focus. Your natural urgent instinct is to say, not right now, I'm incredibly busy with work. You instinctively protect the P. But Covey says, Stop and shift your paradigm. The child actually is the PC. The relationship itself is the ultimate asset. That problem isn't an annoying interruption of your real work. It is an incredible, handed-to-you opportunity to make a massive deposit into the emotional bank account. If you stop, pivot, and genuinely listen to them, you massively build up the asset.
That is profound. And that leads us directly into habit 4. Think win-win. Now, I have to pause and push back a little here. Win-win has become such a massive, watered-down corporate buzzword over the last few decades that it's almost lost all its meaning. It sounds very soft. It sounds like forced compromise. If I'm negotiating a hard salary increase or a tough business contract, isn't someone inherently going to have to lose?
That is the classic scarcity mentality talking right there. It's the deeply ingrained belief that there was only one pie in the world, and if I manage to get a bigger slice of it, you automatically have to get a smaller slice. And you're right, in a strictly zero-sum game like a tennis match, someone has to lose. But real business and long-term human relationships are not sports. They are highly interdependent realities.
So to really understand win-win, what are the actual alternatives we usually default to?
Well, there is win-lose. That is the paradigm of I get my way and you don't. That's highly authoritarian. It relies on position, power, or intimidation, and it always breeds deep, lingering resentment. Then there is lose-win. That's the paradigm of, I'm a complete doormat, step all over me. I don't want any conflict, I just want peace. But it breeds heavily suppressed anger and resentment that eventually explodes in toxic ways. And finally, there is lose-lose. That's the philosophy of, if I'm going down, I'm absolutely taking you down with me. That's pure vindictive revenge.
So win-win really is the only viable long-term strategy if you want sustainable relationships. But what if the person sitting across the negotiation table is an absolute shark? What if they explicitly want me to lose?
That is exactly where Covey's precise definition of win-win gets very gritty and real. It is not just about being a nice person. It requires a delicate balance of two specific traits: courage and consideration.
Okay, unpack those two.
You absolutely need the deep courage to firmly speak up for your own needs, to hold your ground and fight for your win. But simultaneously, you need the genuine consideration to actively listen to and respect the other person's need to win as well. If you have very high courage but totally low consideration, you are just operating in win-lose. You're a bully. If you have low courage but high consideration, you are operating in lose-win. You're a doormat. True win-win requires extremely high courage and extremely high consideration.
And what if, despite all your best efforts, you literally cannot find a solution that genuinely benefits both parties?
Covey suggests a highly radical, incredibly liberating option: no deal.
No deal. Just walking away. That really is liberating. Like saying, hey, if we can't find a legitimate win for both of us here, let's just mutually agree to not do business at all.
Exactly. It immediately takes all the manipulative pressure off the negotiation. It allows you to be radically honest. You can look at them and say, listen, I really want you to win, and I absolutely need to win too. If we cannot structure this so we both thrive, let's just shake hands, remain good friends, and walk away. That paradigm stems from a true abundance mentality, the core belief that there are plenty of amazing opportunities out there for everyone.
But to actually find that elusive win-win solution, you absolutely need habit 5. And I think this might literally be the most difficult habit for people to regularly practice in real life. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
It is arguably the single most important principle in the entire field of interpersonal relations. And universally, we are absolutely terrible at it. Covey uses this brilliant, hilarious analogy of going to an optometrist. Imagine you go into an eye doctor complaining that your vision is really blurry. The doctor immediately takes off his own personal glasses, hands them to you, and says, here, try wearing these. I've been wearing them for 10 years, and they work great for me.
And I put them on, and obviously everything is just a horrible, dizzying blur. I say, this doesn't work at all. It's actually worse. And the doctor gets offended and says, what's wrong with you? You're so ungrateful. I told you I've been wearing these for years. Just think positively and try harder.
It is totally absurd. You would never, ever trust a medical doctor who confidently prescribed a solution before taking the time to properly diagnose the problem. Yet we do this exact same thing in our daily communication all the time. A friend comes to us and starts sharing a deep personal problem, and within maybe 10 seconds, we are aggressively handing them our own glasses. Oh, I know exactly how you feel. When I was in that exact situation 3 years ago, here is exactly what I did.
We are what Covey calls autobiographical listeners. We relentlessly filter every single thing someone else says through the narrow lens of our own life story.
Exactly. We aren't really listening. We are just passively waiting for our turn to speak. We listen strictly with the intent to reply, not with the genuine intent to deeply understand. We are constantly prepping our brilliant comeback or our sage advice in our head while they are talking. Covey strongly calls for a shift to empathic listening. This means listening with the singular intent to fully comprehend the other person's deeply held frame of reference. You are listening not just with your ears, but intensely, with your eyes to observe body language and with your heart to sense the underlying emotion. You aren't necessarily agreeing with them, you are just fully understanding them.
This directly connects back to the ancient Greek philosophy of persuasion, right? Ethos, pathos, logos.
Yes, and the specific sequence of those three words is absolutely vital. Ethos is your personal credibility, your core character. The underlying question is, do I actually trust you? Pathos is the feeling, the deep empathy. The question is, do you truly understand me and my pain? And finally, logos is the logic, the rational reasoning, or the proposed solution.
But most people completely butcher the sequence.
Completely. Most people jump straight to logos. They desperately try to convince you of their point of view using facts, data, and relentless logic. But human psychology dictates that if you haven't first established ethos, which is trust and pathos ensuring they feel deeply understood, your brilliant logic just completely bounces off them like a brick wall. You essentially have to open the heavy gate of human change from the inside. You cannot force it open from the outside with clever arguments.
You absolutely have to validate their reality first. Covey tells this amazing story in the book about a university professor who just could not get crucial funding for his research project.
Right. He was hitting a massive brick wall with the review committee. Covey pulled him aside and gave him some radical advice. He said, do not go in there and present your logical case yet. Go in and painstakingly describe the committee's own point of view better than they can even describe it themselves. So the professor practiced. He walked into the meeting and started by articulating their deep concerns, their severe budget constraints, their natural skepticism of his methods. He validated their position completely and utterly. He proved beyond a doubt that he deeply understood their world.
And what happened?
Once they genuinely felt understood, once he established that deep pathos, the defensive tension in the room just vanished.
Right.
They physically leaned back and said, yes, that is exactly what we are worried about. And only then were their minds totally open to his logic, his logos. He ended up getting the full funding without even having to argue for it.
That is just a masterclass in human influence. Because once you genuinely understand the other side and you are rigorously aiming for a win-win outcome, you unlock the absolute magic of habit 6, synergize.
Synergy. It's become such an overused corporate buzzword, but the actual biological definition of it is profound. Simply put, the whole is substantially greater than the simple sum of its parts. 1 plus 1 realistically equals 3, or sometimes much more.
Wait, 1 plus 1 equals 3. I know people joke about corporate math, but how does that actually work in reality?
It's biological math, really. Look at nature. 1 man plus 1 literally equals a completely new child. A complex, unique entity that is vastly greater than just the sum of the parents. True synergy is a highly creative process. It's the absolute opposite of compromise.
Because compromise is basically 1 plus 1 equals 1.5. We both agree to give up something we want just to get along.
Exactly. Compromise is mathematically a loss. Synergy, however, is combining our completely different perspectives to actively create a third alternative. A totally new and better way that neither of us could have possibly come up with on our own.
But to actually achieve that elusive third alternative, you really need friction. You need people to disagree with you. You need real differences.
Precisely. If two people in a boardroom have the exact same opinion on everything, one of them is completely unnecessary. You actively want the difference. You need the friction to spark the fire. Covey has this great line where he says, if someone fundamentally disagrees with you, your immediate response shouldn't be defensive. You should say, good, you see it completely differently. Please help me see exactly what you see. You intentionally use their different perspective to vastly expand your own map. You lay your map over their map, and suddenly you can actually see the entire real territory. That is the essence of synergy.
Okay, so we have deeply explored the private victory and the public victory. We are theoretically functioning at an incredibly high level of interdependence, but we are humans, not machines. We cannot run at redline forever on an empty tank. We desperately need part 4 of the book, Renewal.
Which brings us to habit 7, sharpen the saw. The metaphor here is just perfect. Imagine you are walking through the woods and you come across a woodcutter, furiously sawing down a massive tree. He is drenched in sweat, totally exhausted. He's been hacking at it for 5 hours. You look closely and notice the saw blade is incredibly dull. So you walk up and gently suggest, hey, why don't you take a 15-minute break and sharpen that saw? you'd probably get the tree down twice as fast. And the woodcutter fiercely snaps back at you. I can't possibly stop. I'm way too busy sawing.
That completely brings us full circle to the busy versus effective trap from the very beginning. We are driving 100 miles an hour, but we stubbornly refuse to pull over for gas because we're too busy driving.
Exactly. Habit 7 is the habit of rigorously preserving and actively enhancing the single greatest asset you will ever have, which is you. It's the ultimate PC of the self. And Covey explains that this vital renewal has to happen consistently across 4 specific dimensions of our nature.
Let's quickly walk through those 4 dimensions. The first one is obvious, physical.
Right. Physical renewal, regular exercise, proper nutrition, deliberate stress management. If you don't aggressively maintain the physical body, the mind eventually fails. Then there is the spiritual dimension. This isn't necessarily just religion. This is deep value clarification, regular meditation, intense connection to nature, or immersing yourself in profound music or art. This is deeply renewing your core.
Then the mental dimension.
Yes, reading widely, writing journals, continuous planning. It's a tragedy, but most people essentially stop all rigorous learning the second they leave formal schooling. You have to intentionally keep the mind sharp and continually expand your paradigms. And finally, the social or emotional dimension. This is the dimension of human relationships, of selfless service, of actively practicing empathic listening and seeking synergy with others.
And doing all of this creates what Covey vividly calls the upward spiral.
Renewal is the powerful engine that drives that spiral. As you consistently take the time to sharpen the saw across all 4 dimensions, you naturally increase your internal capacity to live the other 6 habits. Because you are rested, you instantly have more patience to be proactive, which is habit 1. Because your mind is clear, you have more vision to begin with, the end in mind, habit 2. You have more physical energy to tackle quadrant 2, which is habit 3. You continuously learn, you boldly commit, and you actively do. Then you learn more, you commit deeper, and you do even better. It is a constant, incredibly powerful upward movement of growth.
We have covered an absolutely massive amount of profound ground today. From realizing your map is not the actual territory, to confronting your own funeral, to protecting the goose that lays the golden eggs, to recognizing that you don't move the lighthouse. This entire journey is the very definition of the inside-out philosophy.
It truly is. It's the stark, sobering realization that there simply are no lasting shortcuts in human development. You absolutely cannot change the fruit without doing the hard, unseen work of changing the root. And I really want to circle back to an incredibly poignant story Covey shares in the outro of the book, the story of him finding a specific book in a library while he was in Hawaii.
Yes, this is such a powerful moment. He was on a sabbatical, just aimlessly wandering through the stacks of a university library, and he randomly pulled down a book, opened it, and read a single sentence that completely altered the trajectory of his entire life.
The profound line he read was this: between stimulus and response, there is a gap. In that gap lies our absolute freedom and our inherent power to consciously choose our response. And in our chosen response lies our ultimate growth and our lasting happiness.
That single sentence is honestly the beating heart of the entire 7 Habits philosophy.
It totally revolutionized his life. He wrote about how it completely revolutionized his own marriage. He finally stopped trying to use techniques to change his wife's behavior, and he started relentlessly working on expanding his own gap. He took full ownership of his own response to her. And as a direct result of him changing his roots, the relationship naturally blossomed into something beautiful.
So here is the final, hopefully deeply provocative thought for you listening right now as you go about the rest of your day. We talked at the start about the danger of climbing the wrong ladder. We talked deeply about the importance of having the right map. But ultimately, at the end of the day, everything we've discussed comes down to how you handle the gap.
Exactly. The very next time you feel that strong biological stimulus, the sudden flash of anger at a coworker, the heavy weight of financial stress, the gripping fear of an uncertain future, desperately remember that gap. Do not just blindly react like a shaken-up can of soda exploding all over the room. Take a breath, fully occupy that sacred space, and consciously choose a response that deeply aligns with the immovable lighthouse of your principles.
The inner voice of your conscience is incredibly delicate, making it terrifyingly easy to stifle if you try. But it is also so piercingly clear that if you really listen, it is entirely impossible to mistake it. Listen to it. Actively occupy the gap.
And always remember, you don't ever have to aggressively puff up and pretend to be a battleship to force the world to change its course. You just have to have the humility to look closely at your own map.
That's going to do it for this extensive deep dive into the 7 habits of highly effective people. If you want to keep aggressively sharpening that mental saw of yours, go hit subscribe on the Audible Books channel right now. Until next time, keep climbing with everything you've got, but always make absolutely sure the ladder is leaning against the right wall.
See you all next time.